Greetings and salutations, Heather. Welcome to Norm, the Cheers podcast that isn't quite. It's great to have you back this week. I am Mike. That's Tookie. That's Dave. We are here every week celebrating the greatest live action sitcom in all of recorded history. Cheers. That's what we do every week. We celebrate these wonderful things as long as it is not so hot that we can't focus on a TV show. Holy balls, what a week this has been. My God, it's early June. It's averaging 91 every day. Nobody's got their pool open yet. What is going on in the world? Have you survived the week somewhat pleasantly? Tookie, are you hanging in there?
By floss, not even a thread, just by floss.
Oof. Oh my goodness. Dave is hydrating. Thank God.
Mike, I got your summer cold, so that's thrilling.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Hey, it's nice to know I can still feel something.
It's not for me. I was fine by the time I actually saw you. I got to see Dave in person, and Dave and I and our friend Oren went to the Hall of Fame this past Saturday. It was really fun, and like all young men just like us, we go and visit Cooperstown in upstate New York and look at old baseball artifacts.
With the rest of our young friends, yeah.
Yep, just like the young people do. So we've been, now you were recommending, you've not been to Cooperstown, you have been to the Negro League Hall of Fame in Kansas City, correct?
Yes.
And it's amazing, right? I've never heard anything but raves about.
It is so lovely and so well laid out. And I mean, the gift shop is fantastic.
Yeah.
But everything about it is so comprehensive and well done. And again, well laid out. And there's a great movie to watch too.
Nice.
Usually museum movies are kind of bleh, but no.
Yeah. There is, have I ever mentioned on this podcast before the movie Soul of the Game?
Maybe not.
So
I don't think it's really, really good. It's about it stars Blair Underwood as Jackie Robinson, Delroy Lindo as Satchel Paige, and I'm blanking on who played Josh Gibson, but it was all about the first, who was going to be the first black baseball player in Major League Baseball, and it's really, really good. 42 is kind of the movie that everybody knows. We all love Chadwick Boseman. I didn't think it was quite as good a movie as that one.
McKelty Williamson plays Josh Gibson.
There you go. And I loved, because what was missing from 42, it was fun, but 42, Wesley Morris described it. It was almost like it was so worshipful of Jackie Robinson, who was deserving of it, but it doesn't make the greatest movie. And what was really great about Soul of the Game was you had three main characters who all absolutely believed that they deserved to be the first black baseball player in the major leagues, and the conflict made it a really good movie. So I think it's free on YouTube. So if you're ever just looking for a movie to catch, Soul of the Game, there you go. Blair Underwood deserved more of a career than he got.
Loved LA Law. Loved LA Law. Talk about Thursday night. That was like the cleanup hitter.
Yep.
Cheers came on and set the table, and LA Law delivered.
Blair Underwood's DMs are probably in shambles at the moment.
Why is that?
He just announced he's getting a divorce. That man that man's DMs are in shambles.
Oh, I had no idea, Blair.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So sorry.
I do, but I don't feel, but he'll be fine.
I think Blair will come out okay and land on his feet.
He'll be all right.
Yeah. Was that the strongest iteration of Thursday night must-see TV? Was it Cosby Show, Family Ties, Cheers, Night Court, LA Law?
I mean, that's my that's to me that's apex television.
That's a murderer's row. Because even obviously there's a strong case to be made later on when Seinfeld and Friends and ER are all there. But there were always a couple of Ugly Duckling shows in that lineup. You always had that, and then they would have, Mad About You was in there for a little while. There was always a half-hour gap. even if you loved Mad About You, there was always a show where it's like, and here's a show about college professors marrying with other kids in New York that no one gives a shit about. And just somehow it staggers on. You have 2 seasons of The Single Guy. You've got Caroline in the City, which nobody enjoyed.
Oh,
I'm sorry. That is not casting any kind of aspersions on Leah Thompson, who killed it in so many different things. It wasn't a good show. That was not a good show. Has there ever been less romantic chemistry than between her and Richard? What was that? Remember that? Like her assistant cartoonist?
yeah.
And somehow they got them together like they were Sam and Diane. You're like, I never sensed anything between these two characters.
I'm blanking on his name, but Tracy Ellis Ross's character Joan and her male friend in Girlfriends. That was also a weird when that happened, when the will they of the will they don't won't they happened, everybody was like,
Yeah. It's so weird. And it tells you what's wrong when a show is not right. That's the kind of thing that happens. Because this when a show is going really well and you've got the right characters and the right writers room together, the next thing happens because it's supposed to, where you go, all right, we're going to try this because it feels like this is supposed to happen. And then the audience lets you know it's totally working. Which is, going to Friends, like kind of what happened with Monica and Chandler. They said, all right, we're going to have this. And then the audience loved it so much. They said, all right, I think we need to keep these two together. I like Monica and Chandler.
I'm out on Friends.
I'm sorry. I go to bat for Friends.
I'm
watch.
not
saying it's not problematic. I'm not saying I don't look back and go, all right, that's a little uncomfortable. But I think by and large, I thought that was a really well acted, tightly written show.
I'll watch a half an hour of Lisa Kudrow reading the phone book, but
she's great.
I'm not going back. I'm not going back to that well.
A weird thing I noticed about Friends, and more so than most any sitcom I ever saw, because I watched the Friends reunion and it was fine. They were I thought, clearly I'm on an island on this one. I thought they were all such talented comedic actors. And yet the only one interesting when she wasn't having lines written for her was Lisa Kudrow. Everyone else, when they're interviewed, is like, oh, this needs to never happen again. They're really not good interviews, which is why I think in the reunion they had to build the game and they had to kind of artificially add this stuff for them to do, because when it's just them talking, you're like, oh, this needs to end. This should not be happening. So anyway.
Well, I just don't like a lot of the byproducts of Friends. Like the last trip that second to last trip that I took before lockdown was out on the West Coast. And I happened to run into, while heading to brunch, I ran into a gaggle of bridesmaids wearing matching tank tops that said, "You're my lobster." Lobsters don't mate for life.
I mean, I'm gonna completely agree with you. Jacques Cousteau would have been shocked and offended, but I thought it worked on the show. In the moment, I was okay with that.
All right. I'm not gonna sit here and continue to yuck your yum, Mike. You live your best life.
I'm trying, and I acknowledge, and I'm not gonna try to win folks over, but I will say we've rewatched them on HBO Max, and we've talked about this. Clearly, we're living this. When you watch an old sitcom, there's going to be stuff in that makes you go, not comfortable. But by and large, I think it's a tightly written show. And you know what else is a tightly written show? This week's episode.
Oh,
episode
boy.
13, season 2, huge rally, Battle of the Exes. Am I alone on this one, or was this a tremendous comeback episode?
Mike, this is a top 5 episode for me.
Really?
Great, wasn't it?
This is an all-timer for me. I part of it is because it's an episode I remember watching. It's one of the few episodes I remember watching as a kid that specific lines and moments have stuck with me from 1984. But I adore this episode.
This episode didn't do it for me.
Wow.
Whoa.
Okay.
No, I didn't care for it.
Tookie Kavanaugh coming in with a hot take.
No, it didn't work for me.
Wow.
I'm so sorry.
No,
Wow.
don't be sorry. I'm on the floor. I thought this was such a rally episode. I thought it was the best one of the season so far.
It's better than a lot of the stuff that we've encountered thus far. I will say it's a leg up, but in terms of like it it really had it. That third act was needed because the two acts prior were not hitting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I thought there were line drives all over the place. I thought the balls were bouncing off the walls and flying into the net. All right, we're gonna have a lot to chew on this week. All right, so Battle of the Exes. Dave, what was going on when this episode that Tookie is very wrong about premiered?
Well, this premiered.
Okay.
I mean, what happened when this episode that Tookie has a very valid opinion on premiered, Dave?
Well, this premiered on January 5th, 1984. My wife.
1984. That was a big
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah, my wife's 12th birthday.
Wow.
Somewhat coincidentally, and I really all I wanted to check in on this week was New Year's has just happened, and which led me down the rabbit hole of looking up Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year's Eve from that year, and I'm going to post a link on our Facebook page to a complete recording of that particular program, because I've been bouncing around it all night, and it is really something. It's hosted by Doug Barr from The Fall Guy and Priscilla Barnes, who I remember from Three's Company.
Doug Barr, he played Howard, right?
Yep.
Fall Guy making another appearance on Norm.
Yeah, just you can't. There's so much cross promotion happening.
That movie has to happen. It has to.
The format.
Come on, Rock. You got to make it work.
The format of the show was kind of amazing because there were performers including Laura Branigan, Culture Club, Rick James, and Barry Manilow.
Tremendous.
And they perform multiple times. Like they perform multiple songs. It's kind of like cabaret style. And then they periodically go to Dick Clark outside in Times Square. It's great. I mean, Rick James kills it. Culture Club's amazing. Laura Branigan is an appreciated gem. But like I said, I'll post the link to this show just so you can watch the banter between Doug Barr and Priscilla Barnes. It's magical. It's absolutely worth it, and it starts 1984 off on the right foot. So that's what I wanted to look at this week.
Very nice.
How high was Rick James? You suppose?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would give him an M.
Ooh,
because he's past numbers.
Cool.
He is
great.
He is lip syncing on another planet, and it is wild.
Fabulous. All right, I have a question, an opinion on this. Dick Clark, young viewers, of which we have 3. If you don't know, Dick Clark, host of American Bandstand, really kind of famous as a host. And the on-running joke, if you did not know this, he's passed away, but for years was that he did not age. That somehow Dick Clark remained the same age for like 50 years. It was the go-to joke. Who is the new Dick Clark? Who is the person where you're like, somehow you still look exactly like you did 40 years ago and you look great? Who is that person?
It used to be Pharrell until he said all lives matter. Then the ancestors snatched his youth. So
how old is Pharrell? Pharrell's not that old, is he?
Have you? All right.
I did not know.
Pharrell is the ancient one before Tilda Swinton co-opted that role in the Marvel universe. You understand?
That's how great a Dick Clark he is, apparently. I had no idea that he was even in the running for this.
Yeah, Pharrell, yeah. Again, he fucked up and said all lives matter, and the ancestors snatched his youth. But it was Pharrell for like a long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
We could be watching a Dick Clark. We could be in the middle of a Dick Clark like run by Paul Rudd.
Ooh, yeah.
Paul Rudd, strong argument.
Yeah.
Okay, my go-to for this, and I think I've got the winner.
Okay.
Angela Bassett.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been stunning for what, 30 years now?
You
I
know,
mean,
though.
if she went in and did What's Love Got to Do with It tomorrow, would you notice the difference?
No.
No. No, Waiting to Exhale. They could do the sequel tomorrow and say it was happening a month after the original Waiting to Exhale.
She could be the new Black Panther, and the entire nation would rally around her.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, prior to her passing, Cicely Tyson. Cicely Tyson was 156 years old and looked phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
Yep.
It's true. The people used to say the former like female Dick Clark, a lot of people used to say was Lena Horne.
Oh yeah.
Lena Horne had that reputation too of like stunning for 60 straight years. Yep. Dark horse candidate too, potentially. And I'm realizing all my contenders are women, but Jennifer Tilly.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah.
Jennifer Tilly, been going since like 81 when she did Moving Violations. And she's still somehow kind of playing those same roles. And you're like, okay, Jennifer Tilly, still there.
Like, who do you want to spend time with on your New Year's Eve every year? Like, who do you want to see pop up? Like, I want to see Angela Bassett. I want to see Paul Rudd.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those
if
are the
you
faces.
gave me a New Year's Eve special every year, co-hosted by Angela Bassett and Paul Rudd, I promise attendance every January 1st until I am gone.
I mean, it might be the only thing that can save us as a nation.
Yeah,
probably.
That would bring us together.
Probably.
All right, but let's get ready to be torn apart. Tookie, tell us all about the cold opening of this week that filled you with rage.
I appreciate at least the consistency of season 2, where the cold opens actually have something to do with the meat of the episode.
That is a very season 2 thing, is it not?
Yeah. So I've appreciated that as a running motif, if you will, throughout the season. So we have Diane entering the bar, and she's confiding in Coach that Sam has told her that she's not as spontaneous as he'd like her to be, and so she decides that because she overheard in one of her Samoan literature classes that someone mentioned to her that there was this quaint, lovely, romantic inn in Maine. That the only way to get in is if you know. And so she grabs the phone and I should note the Coach jokes. Yes, because there
Lots
was some
of good. This whole episode felt like a lot of great Coach lines.
Yeah. So there were some nice coach bits about doing this that's frustrating. Well, just because he doesn't do it, I do it. Yeah, but it doesn't make it any less frustrating. Love you, Coach. R.I.P. So Diane gets the number to this lovely, cozy, romantic inn in Maine and calls him up and says, "Yes, I'd like to make a room for Malone." "Yes, Sam Malone." His usual room. Cut to credits.
Nice. And that establishes our B story for the week, which is very simply, just Diane deciding that she wants to do a spontaneous getaway with Sam, and they can't find any place that Sam has not been to before.
Yeah.
But they're going to have their getaway. And it's a cute little B story. Maybe a tiny little E- story is Cliff Clavin somehow being mistaken for somebody else who was handsome and being sad about it, but barely really another storyline. But it's in there and not really connected to anything else. So I'm going to call it its own little storyline.
It was
and
really
also begging the question of how many drinks could you have in the 80s and still be the one to drive people home?
James Cocaine.
It was really exciting to see somebody actually get drunk in this bar.
Yeah.
We haven't seen that all season.
It is an unusual thing. And it begs the question, how many did Cliff actually have to get there? Because what a tolerance he has to have. The A story, the wedding of Nick Tortelli. The first appearance of Dan Hedaya as Nick Tortelli, and it's just spectacular. He comes in, kills it, every line. Carla enters the bar. She's furious. She's so mad. She rips Norm's sweater over his head, goes into the office. Sam goes in to help, does the same thing with his sweater. Dr. Paul Kendall, who I want to turn to in a moment of crisis with a fabulous little co-star role. Comes in, announces who he is. He's wearing a sweater. You know what's going to happen, but still, it's beautifully established. Walks in, sweater over the head, comes out. I didn't even see her. I think she dropped down from the ceiling. Wonderful little laugh.
Is every patron at this bar who isn't in the credits named Paul? This is like it's our third Paul.
Weird. Yeah, I jotted that down too. Like, I mean, one of the great writers' rooms of all time in Cheers. No one could think of a non-Paul name. Why is everyone Paul? Like, were they in the mob?
Maybe they're huge Saul of Tarsus fans. Sorry,
I don't know.
It's a really
That's a deep cut, Dave Ravenel. You lost both of us.
Sorry.
So I don't think that's a young person or old person reference. I got nothing.
It's a Tom Stoppard joke.
Oh, it's a Tom Stoppard joke.
That explains. So
You know how to
much.
play to the whole room.
Enjoy, America.
All right. Yeah, you're not pandering with the Sam Beckett humor for the masses. Straight Tom Stoppard. Very nice. Okay. Diane goes into the office, and Carla's problem is that her ex is getting married to Loretta. Great little joke about the picture. She's naked. So is he. I thought he was wearing mohair pajamas. I've remembered that for 30 years.
That's same. That's a joke because I had to ask my mom what mohair was, and she explained it. And that was the most visceral post viewing image that I've ever carried with me from any show.
And as I got hairier over the years, that started to become my fear that I was going to become the living mohair pajama guy. I don't think I got there.
No,
but that is what everyone started to fear after this joke, is that you were going to become the new Nick Tortelli.
But wasn't being a Harryman like a thing back in that?
No, it was 70s. It was 80s.
Okay.
You started to get it was going downhill. You can watch Cheers. You can watch the evolution of it as the buttons get higher and higher.
Okay.
And if the buttons are open, you're a sleazy character.
Okay, because you know, I associate a certain era, especially in media and movies and TV, with like the macho, manly, masculine man with the taco meat under the collar and everything.
Yeah.
You know, like I just, you know, and my mom used to rave about my alleged father, Sean Connery, and his hairiness. So it's a whole thing in my family. Don't ask.
Bless your mom.
Yeah. My alleged father, Sean Connery. And how my mom.
Good evening, Mrs. Kavanaugh.
Yeah. So, you know, I thought being a Harryman at that point in time was like like the push broom mustache. Like I thought that was the look.
The line of demarcation for both of those, they phased out. They peaked mid 70s and then gradually declined until by the late 80s, that was kind of gone. You can really go, you could just watch. Burt Reynolds was really peak for both of those. And as his career fizzled, both of those things were also following. It was their lines were completely parallel, apexing and descending. So yeah, right around now, it was going down. And by 88, you can just look at baseball cards and see how many mustaches disappeared by right around 88, 89. It was pretty much over. But like the 86 Red Sox, 7 out of 9 mustaches?
Oof. That's
so
much.
And I think you got to you have to, based on what we saw this weekend, I think you do have to sort of denigrate baseball players on like a 5-year, like they're just like 5 years behind the fashion trends.
Yeah.
So you see a mustachioed guy in 89 that went out in 85.
Exactly. Right there. So Carla is upset because she doesn't like her husband anymore, but he's rubbing it in her face that he's marrying this gorgeous woman who's better than her. Diane suggests bringing someone to make him jealous. So there's little confusion. Carla thinks it's going to be Sam. She goes to ask Sam. At first he says no. Then Nick comes in, is obnoxious with his new bride, and Sam pretends to be her boyfriend. They end up with Diane's blessing. They end up going to the wedding. It works like gangbusters. Totally jealous. Sam and Carla have a moment where they realize how well they know each other. Nick and Loretta come in. Loretta, played by Jean Kasem, married to the great late Casey Kasem.
Ah,
Yes.
the voice of Shaggy from Scooby-Doo.
Exactly.
Indeed.
The voice of Robin from Super Friends, the voice of a lot of things, as well as American Top 40.
Mhm.
So she comes in, they come in, because Sam seems to want Carla so much. Nick decides that he still wants Carla, tries to get her back. She says no. He says, hey, I tried. A bunch of really funny lines in this where Dan Hedaya basically creates an archetype for a character he will play from then until present day. And basically play the exact same character on Family Ties as well. He really dominated the guest star Thursday night lineup for quite a few years there on NBC.
Even his turn as Richard Nixon was
Mm-hmm.
had smattered hints, just a
Yep.
hint of that
And
character.
you're absolutely right. In the movie Dick with Kirsten Dunst and who else?
Some
Who's
white
that?
girl.
So there you go. And he made an appearance in a character arc on another must-see TV show. Can you name it?
Oh, did he? He didn't pop up on Night Court, did he?
He did not.
I don't remember.
ER. He was a
ER.
lawyer who represented Dr. Mark Green in court.
Wow.
There you go.
Dan Hedaya is an American treasure, and I just think we need to lay that on the line right here. Still out there, still doing Dan Hedaya things. A wider skill set than perhaps you can get from just this part, but just one of America's great character actors.
Really, really, he knew what he did well, and he did it. It was really good. And also, what was his biggest role? Is probably Clueless. As much
or
as people knew him for this, Clueless was gigantic.
Clueless, Aliens is huge.
Yep. But do you think he's as well known for Aliens? I feel like
he's not the star. I think he has more.
He's in Aliens. I never forget he's Nick Tortelli, and I never forget he's in Clueless. I think. But that's just me. All right. So they leave. Very weird moment, but I think also dramatically justified, and I was okay with it. Sam and Carla have a kiss, and they said maybe we just both wanted to see what it was like, and then it was over. And then Diane comes in, and somehow everything's fine, and that's never mentioned again. That is the only part of this week's episode that made me go, really? That's just forgotten about, and no one needs to say anything, and all right, I guess so. If I found out that my significant other just kissed somebody that they were pretending to be on a date with, not cool with it. But apparently in this world, it's okay. Diane doesn't find out, and that's all right. And I'm on board with it. It's not a big problem for me. So that was this week's episode. What I loved about it, I just jotted down a lot of great jokes in this episode, a lot of great one-liners, a lot of great asides. There are so many things that don't even get huge laughs from the TV audience or from the studio audience because they're almost so beautifully underplayed. Like one of my favorite jokes this week was when they were coming back in after the wedding and Loretta said, Nick, come on, we're going to miss the bus as they're getting ready for their honeymoon. That's a great little joke. Great joke there. I mean, just there's so many nice things in there. So yeah, that was a great joke. Now, we can start here. Tookie, do you want to start with your issues with this week's episode?
You know, the first couple acts just weren't strong for me. I don't know. The writing felt a skosh predictable in a sense. Some of the jokes, and it felt like, in a sense, the actors kind of labored their way through these very long setups to get to the punchline, like the whole station wagon bit with Coach. Felt like that. It was, Coach is, Coach is going to coach. She's going to nail that, of course. But it felt like, for some reason, I just wasn't accustomed to the pace. And we did look up like who wrote this episode. Sam Simon was one of them, and Edston. I'm blanking on the other guy's name.
Ken Eston, yeah.
Ken Eston, yes. And Sam Simon did go on to write for The Simpsons. And
He
Ken
was one of the
Astin.
co-creators for The Simpsons, made an absolute fortune because he was one of the, even though he didn't do a ton for it, he was considered one of the co-creators, and just printed money for the rest of his life.
Yeah. And then Ken Astin, had apparently won a whole bunch of Emmys, some of which were for Taxi, and I guess the Tracy Ullman Show at one point or another. So like I get why they'd be a big deal, but I don't know, just something about this episode didn't quite pick up for me until we got deeper in, and even then it still felt like no jokes, just vibes. But
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just surprising because I like the things that I wrote down where there were so many good jokes in this week's episode. I thought there were nice coach callbacks. I thought there were so many moments where I genuinely laughed out loud.
Yeah, I didn't guffaw. I know.
I completely agree with you that third act is once Nick and Loretta leave. It's almost joke free until Diane comes in. But that was just another like one of those after closing time sequences in the bar that I just adored. I was just like, this is actual complicated human behavior that they have to kind of wrestle with. And I think Mike, you make a good point that like that everything, it's sitcom world where everything's okay and he goes off with Diane. But I think I think the series kind of redeems it by ultimately that relationship not succeeding. Like there's, when he kisses Carla, it's not just about he and Carla, but it's also about this long-term failing that Sam has, that he will act on impulse. And that is going to eventually sink this relationship with Diane. And that we know Carla's impulsive. And she'll act on that. And I think that color is, I would argue that color does kind of exist after this episode. That whatever passed between them in those few moments doesn't necessarily go away over the life of the series. And I really like, to me, like that sequence was like up there with the Sam bottle cap episode, and all those,
I was thinking that.
Yeah, those like great post closing time in the bar, kind of like Dark Night of the Soul moments.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I think that the contradiction that I would make, 2 points. One is that I think the first two acts build to the third act, and even though they don't have the emotional heft of that third act, those provide the support for that third act. And I don't think the third act works if the first and second act don't work as well as they do. So, that is definitely the apex of the show. But I do think that the first two acts help get you there. And I think those are stronger than maybe they're getting credit for. And two, there are jokes in that third act. And this is one of those weeks where I noticed the jokes more the second time, simply because that third act had more emotional heft and the studio audience wasn't laughing as much. But I made a point of jotting down a few of those jokes. We're going to miss the bus was this great subtle joke. And one of the nice things is I felt like the third act was so well acted that the actors didn't feel the need to hit those jokes hit you over the head with those jokes. There was the moment where Dan Hedaya Nick was asking, were you seeing him while they were together? No, I was always faithful to you, Nick. Why? Were you seeing Loretta? What, am I on trial here? That was I laughed out loud the second time, and I don't know if I did the first time, but the second time I heard that, I laughed out loud the way that he played that, because he was playing that so genuine to that character, and it's so absurd that was his reaction. But I thought it was a really well written moment. Even
the post kiss where Carla says, "I've had better," and Sam says, "What will I have it?" And she says, "I know." It's perfect joke writing, but it's also played for realsies, and it's lovely. It's my favorite Carla moment I think that we've had so far.
And it's really beautiful and true to those characters, because Sam kind of had to say that, and Carla had to kind of say that in where they're coming from respectively. And it worked, and it owned it, and you kind of felt like they appreciated both of those comments from each other.
I definitely believe Sam and Carla as a more plausible couple than Sam and Diane. Oddly enough, like that weird, they're kind of an odd couple, but when you see them together, you get it. If that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
watching him dote on her, when Dan Hedaya is in the room, it's like it does weirdly make sense. Like,
Yeah.
how physical he is with her. It really is like you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this could work.
Yep. I agree with you, but I think it's also reflective of Sam's issues, which is
Mm.
he's great at friendship and bad at romance, which is why he is drawn to women he has conflict with because it prevents him from any kind of deep intimacy. So, that moment with him and Carla and all the moments work so well because he's great at being somebody's friend. He's really good at that and being there for someone. And so that moment rings very true to you, but you also know that there could never be a relationship between the two of them because Sam can't function with a woman that way.
Mm.
Like he can't, at least not at this time, really, and later on in Frasier too, you just kind of know that he can't build a sustained relationship with someone where you can look at them and say, I love you and you're my best friend. Like Sam doesn't have that gear. His best friends are there and they're in the bar. And ultimately, he gets treated for sex addiction and all that's there, but maybe that's just who Sam is. And he's not going to have that kind of relationship. And so those moments with Carla are great and they do have a kiss. But I almost felt like, I guess on some level, I felt like they were having that kiss because he wanted to see what a kiss would be like with a woman that he was friends with. And I don't think he could process it completely. And then it was over. Maybe I'm delving too deeply into the psyche of Sam Malone.
No, I don't think so. I think that's one of the things I really that really did kind of get me about this episode. Like you're saying, everything felt to me the behavior felt complex, but also plausible. Like it made sense based on our understanding of who these people are and what they want out of life. And yeah, like when Sam kisses her, like I do think it's an impulsive act. But he's like I said, he's not a character that's given to introspection prior to action.
Right.
And I think that's what makes that moment after so fun and interesting and juicy is like you're watching this character who's not given introspection, all of a sudden have to deal with this grenade that he's kind of lobbed into his own lap. And it's a really wonderful piece of acting that he's doing there. And Rhea Perlman as well. Like they're both like kind of juggling this, like, oh my, like in that moment, like there's huge stakes. Like what is our relationship going to be after this? And they kind of fumble around until they get to the place where they both agree, like we want to go back to what we had, even with the knowledge of what we almost did.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, they do. They seem to make that conscious choice of, and they know each other so well. And that's part of what they're talking about earlier on is how well they know each other. And they know each other well enough to know we need to stay friends because we don't do this part of our lives well. And I can't bear to lose you as a friend. Yeah. Yep. All right. By the way, Sam Malone likes to wear a nightie.
Who knew?
How about that?
No. Progressive.
Little progressive moment in 1984.
Progressive. The only man whose choices in traditionally feminine attire I will ever shit on, J. Edgar Hoover. Fuck that guy.
Fuck that guy.
Not because of his choices, just fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Fuck that guy. Terrible taste in dresses. Fuck him.
Yep.
Garbage person. Terrible fashions.
Well, Sam Malone never actively tried to harm the LGBTQ community at any point. So, yeah, we're judging them on different criteria, which I think is totally appropriate.
Yeah.
Totally appropriate.
Right. Yeah, we definitely shouldn't judge J. Edgar Hoover and Sam Malone, a fictional baseball player, by the same criteria.
Okay, philosophical question. Would an ex ever invite you to their wedding and would you go?
On what planet? I mean,
right?
If it's a nice gesture to invite if you're on good terms, but that's cool. I'm not going. I'm not going.
I won't go to like friends' weddings at this point. But I think I think that it's again like indicative of how smart Dan Hedaya is, that he looks at the scripts and goes, oh, all right, Nick Tortelli's a monster, therefore I will play him as a bug-eyed lizard man.
Yes. Completely appropriate. Yeah. Yep. But yeah, I was just trying to think. It made me wonder, like, does this ever happen in real life? I know it's bizarre and it's okay because Nick Tortelli is such a weird ape man. But yeah, would that happen with normal human beings? Would you ever get invited to your ex's wedding?
I think I had heard of like a friend of mine in that situation, but no one I know immediately. You know.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of any like divorced couple where one party is going to the other's wedding.
Mm.
You got to be real good friends.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of, you got to be real good friends, or like if one of you, if it was a Fran Drescher type of situation, where you had a long wedding and then at some point one of you says, by the way, I love you and you're a dear friend, but I'm gay and I can't do this any longer. And you make peace, and then you go, all right, well, I want you to be happy, so here I go. Mm-hmm. And now we're back to Friends, where Ross Geller goes to his ex-wife's wedding.
Oh, God.
See, it all comes back to Friends. It's the nexus.
I don't want to play this game of 6 degrees of separation.
All right. I mean, if you want to keep fighting it, it's your call.
6 degrees of NB separation.
All right. What's your joke of the week this week, Toki?
When listen, this episode was more sit than calm for me.
I completely agree, by the way. I completely agree. Like the first 2 acts are very chill.
Yeah. It's not that it wasn't a good episode. It's just that I was looking for calm, and I got a lot more sit. But I think it was when was it Sam was ready to kick Nick's butt at one point. I think they're getting ready to fight, and Carla was excited, like, oh yes, this will be good. Nick's a bleeder.
Very fun.
I like that.
Very fun. Dave, your joke of the week.
I mean, I thought he was wearing mohair pajamas. Is one of the funniest lines that I've ever heard. And again, like, there's only one human being they could have cast who walks in and you say, "Oh, I get it," and it's Dan Hedaya. I mean, since we already did touch on that line, I will say that Dan Hedaya looking at Sam Malone with his arm around Rhea Perlman and saying, "Sam, I thought you was cool," is an amazing joke.
Amazing. Fabulous.
Yeah.
So mohair pajamas was my leading contender, but since you chose that, I'm going to go with Coach counting up the receipts for the evening and being off by $16,000, which was very funny initially. And then, as is the beauty with Coach, callback. Sam comes in, a little trouble with the receipts tonight. How far off were you? 20, 30,000? And then beaming with pride.
So sweet.
60,000. Hey, look at you. Somebody's bucking for a promotion.
If it happens,
it happens. And of course, what are you getting promoted to? There's nothing else.
Right.
There's no other job. But I loved the delivery of it. I laughed out loud. I love the affection that you see. Whenever you see that genuine affection for Coach from Sam, it really is just a reminder of who Sam is, who Coach is, what the bar is, and why everything matters and why it all works.
I think especially after last week, which was a really strangely nihilistic episode.
Yeah.
It was so nice to see the bad guy get offloaded to a new character, to Nick Tortelli, and to let every other character in the bar this week really kind of behave in a very positive, affirmative, kind of loving way with each other. And sometimes that stuff went got weird, but it was always rooted in affection for each other. Even like Norm and Cliff were like super supportive of each other. And I think that's one of the things I just really appreciated. Even while those first two acts weren't like propulsive, I didn't mind kind of luxuriating in the camaraderie of everything.
Uh-huh. Well put. Tookie, how white was this week's episode?
It wasn't like a full jar of mayo, but I counted 3 Black people.
Okay.
There was a guy, it was the first act though, and the remainder of the episode not so much. But in the first act, there was a man hanging out by the jukebox with some folks wearing a Red Sox cap and a couple sitting at the bar.
All right.
3 Black people.
There you go. 3 strong.
On like a side note, this was one of the first times I can remember a supporting role being given to a woman, a speaking supporting role being given to a woman. With the woman who calls out Cliff for not being attractive.
Oh yeah.
I thought that I was nice to see that. I mean, obviously it's a huge shortcoming in the series because it doesn't happen often enough that I have to remark on it. But it was, I guess, a positive.
I have a question. This is a philosophical question. We can edit this out later because we're not going to air this live. A question I was wondering in terms of how white was this episode every week? If there was a Jewish character, does that in any way count for diversity in an episode of Cheers? Or is that just, look, white is white?
If you're Eastern European Ashkenazi, I understand. I am half of a Sephardi.
Right.
A semi-Sephardi.
Semi-Sephardi. So I absolutely, fully am aware of anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish sentiments, and the fact that they're persecuted just for existing. But if it's the case that you can benefit from white privilege in some way or another, if it's the case, if it's the case that if you're not in any sort of identifying garb, any sort of religious garb, you still benefit from whereas a person who could be of Arabic descent and not even Muslim is still met possibly with, anti-Islamic sentiment.
It was a philosophical question that popped into my head. I wasn't completely sure how that goes. Yeah.
That's just my perspective.
I think that's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
It's not that there isn't discrimination and anti-Semitism that exists. It's the fact that, me disclosing, I actually made a post a couple years ago that was like, hey, here's how to help marginalized community. Here's how to help the Black community specifically. And I got called out by a bunch of people who I'm not even Facebook friends with, but like the Facebook mom, before I figured out how to like limit comments on public posts to only people who are on my friends list instead of the whole public commenting. A lot of the moms got on me like, blah, 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 blah. There's a gaping hole where you left out the Jewish community. And I had to be like, well, hey, fun fact, my dad is Jewish.
Yeah.
But if it were the case that my uncle showed up, but he's my uncle from my mom's side, and he showed up to your doorstep wearing a yarmulke, what are you going to notice first? The hat or the skin tone?
Fair. What hat?
The yarmulke.
Gotcha. Well, but like, if he showed up in a full-on Indiana Jones fedora, doesn't happen a lot. I'm probably noticing that hat.
Maybe.
That's all I'm saying.
Maybe. It's a small hat.
Depends.
I'm wondering, by the way, the other philosophical thing I was wondering is we were looking at hats at the Hall of Fame. Are we hitting an age where we need to come up with an older hat? I remember my friend Larry Cohen, God rest his soul, when he was in his late 50s, he said, I think I'm too old for baseball caps anymore. Now, we are not there. But he bought a trilby, which is not a fedora, but it is a hat. He said, I think it's time for me to have a gentleman's hat. I want a hat sometimes, and I don't think I feel silly. Are we philosophically, potentially, going to have to start thinking about a different hat choice later on.
I mean, I can only speak for myself and the aesthetic that I've sort of carved out at this moment. Anything that goes on top of this is just icing on a Manson cake. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like
all
you
looks
could,
like a disguise.
yeah, you could dress this up as much as you want, but it's still cousin it with probably a drifter in the basement. So there's really it's gonna take. There's no hat that can do that kind of heavy lifting.
Like whenever you house shop again, I want you to very seriously tell your real estate agent it's very important that we have a basement. Don't explain why. Don't justify it. Don't say what you're going to do with the basement. Just stress how important it is that you have a good basement.
Is there an entrance to this place that you can't see from the street?
How soundproof would you say this is?
It's unfinished. I like that.
Yeah,
that's good. That's
It's
good.
the aesthetic.
Dirt floor. You don't see this very often.
You could probably fit a vat of lye in here. Just saying.
How much weight can you put on the ductwork before it starts to bow?
Oh, it's getting grim this week here on this. All right, Dave, what was your '80s moment of the week?
I really got caught up in the sweaters. I loved Carla hockey fighting everybody and pulling sweaters over heads. And I really every sweater was magical to me. They were all just like little, each one was a snowflake. But the capper, and again, I don't want to repeat myself by looking too deep into the background, but there's a moment when we're looking at the bar, and there's a couple of there's three people. There's a woman in a very nice, what I think is a sweater vest, and then there are two dudes in like pastel sweaters, a couple different shades of light blue, and like just after Sam's sweater, Norm's sweater, Dr. whatever sweater, seeing those two kind of hovering in the background and realizing if Carla isn't dealt with it, she's going to pull the sweaters over everybody's head, and those guys are probably next. And like maybe that was an idea that they had. They're going to put everybody in a sweater, and at some point she's going to go sweater to sweater to sweater. Seeing those beautiful 80s sweaters all just lined up ready for Carla's hungry hands. I'm going to give the sweaters of this episode my 80s moment.
Lovely. Took your 80s moment.
I had 1.5.
Oh, great.
Which was the woman saying that Cliff used to look like Tyrone Power.
Yeah.
What?
Good pull. Yeah.
I had to Google Tyrone Power. I was very unsure. And then also, I'm old enough to have watched this movie and owned it on VHS in the 90s, but mention of Lady and the Tramp out in the wild and not just like, in the context of nostalgic Disney, but as recent Disney of some sort was like, oh,
I think, no, great point. I don't know because the thing about Disney is when I was a kid, I remember going to see Lady and the Tramp in the movie theater and thinking it was a recent movie, but Disney always re-released their movies. Yeah. I mean, that movie could have been made in the 50s. It could have been made any decade up until I saw it in the early 80s. So yeah, I don't know when it was, but it was definitely culturally relevant because it wasn't long after a re-release and Lady and the Tramp would have been right there. And that moment was on TV and commercials a lot of the time. So yeah. Very 80s moment.
Oh no, it's old enough such that, we are Siamese.
Awkward, but I also don't think impossible for them to have made that in the early 80s.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. David, can you look that up and tell us when Lady and the Tramp was made?
I'm looking. It was made in 55. And wow. Was reissued to theaters in 62, 72, 80, and coming up in 86.
Aha.
There you go. 80. Okay. Wow, 55. I did not think it was that old.
Yeah, it is a chestnut.
Holy cow. All right. There you go. Yeah, I tried to talk my son into it, and he was not particularly interested. 8. Yeah, I know.
I don't blame him.
I'm there.
I don't blame.
There's a lot of those older movies, and then after you'd said no, I remembered We Are Siamese and said maybe a good call. I forgot.
Don't let him see the piano scene in Aristocats.
No.
Oh, I don't remember that at all.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I will dodge that bullet.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the thing about grown up white. Yeah. Like there's so many moments, and I made whole bits about it. Where you go, oh, hey, I didn't realize that had happened.
It's that old classic joke of where there's fortune cookies involved and R's and L's are switched.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Sam Creepy Quotient. Oh, I'm sorry. My 80s moment of the week.
Yeah.
My 80s moment of the week is Sam going into his office and saying, if anybody calls, take a message.
Huh.
And just realizing that was really the last time that you had to specify that. And then the next season, there would be that moment where Sam like made a big announcement about getting an answering machine for the bar, and it was a big deal. But yeah, at that point where it was, hey, I get phone calls and I need to know who's calling and I need to be able to call them back. Just the idea of communication at that time, so specific and different. Very 80s moment of the week.
Mm.
By the way, they're talking about going to this inn. I would not. I'm sorry. I love my wife so much. I enjoy some quiet time. I could not do a weekend in a place that had no TV. Maybe that's my personal failing. I'm not saying I want to watch TV all week, but there's got to be some point in the weekend where I can just put something on and go, ah. Am I a simpleton? Am I just not like one with nature or not cultured enough? Would you ever wanted to have that weekend? Like if your significant other said, I'm surprising you and we're going to this quiet little inn on an island, no TV, no radio, just us for the weekend. I mean, you'd fake an accident, right?
You know what? I would turn off email notifications and log off the social media. But we bring the iPad to every the iPad to every trip. You got to watch something.
Of course. If you said, yeah, we're going to leave our cell phones here, fine. Yeah, if you even said, all right, we're going to download some stuff to watch, but we're going to turn off, we're going to put it on, sleep. And no one's going to be able to get in touch with us. Great, fine. I need to watch Fletch at some point over the weekend.
Is that just like something that you need to do whenever you're on a romantic weekend?
Yeah, it's like getting a shot of insulin. It's just, look, it's just going to keep me level. It's my baseline. That's all I'm saying. At some point, I want to watch something.
Yeah, like I want to call you a monster, and yet as I think about it, like, yeah, like, all of a sudden, like we finished dinner, like it's 10 o'clock, like I want to relax. Yeah. Like, what are we gonna do?
Talk again?
We've been talking all day,
right?
We hiked, we kayaked, we can't play chess.
No.
Like I don't know. If there's canoodling, like I think there should be like there needs to be pre-canoodling, and the TV's part of the pre-canoodle.
It's prep time. Absolutely.
That's a lot of information, but I respect it.
Before cable, there were maybe 10 channels, not much to watch, and yet we always found something, didn't we, Kelly?
We did,
didn't we? We found something. You made do with what you had. Even then, it's like, all right, you know what? We're watching Little Carson. We had a full day of culture and romance and exercise, and now I want the monologue. That's all I'm saying. That would not be my weekend. I want a TV.
David Mamet's a monster, but
yes.
One thing he did, something he said in one of his playwriting books was that we as human beings crave narrative at the end of the day to kind of make it feel like our lives make sense. And I think there's I want that end of the day kind of like, let's button these things up.
There you go.
I think Dewey agrees.
Yeah, he's got a lot of
Dewey.
opinions.
All right. Any other final thoughts about this week's episode to put a button on it? Oh, Sam Creepy Quotient.
Oh yeah.
Shockingly,
7.
if I can lead with this, for a week, where he kisses another woman. And also the B story is about how they can't find a hotel where he hasn't been with another woman.
Mm-hmm.
I thought a rather low Sam creepy quotient this week.
Felt like a 7 to me just because of those moments.
Yeah.
Because
I had
he
him under
initiated
5.
the kiss.
Right. I had him under 5 this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd give him a 3 because I think he learned something.
He grew.
Yeah, he seems to discover, that this bad Sam not do again.
And comfortable with the nighty moment.
Yeah.
I think you get some credit for that.
Okay. All right. I will agree. I will lower my score to 5.5.
Fair. Whatever you think is fair. Whatever you think is fair. All right. Any final thoughts about this episode?
Put the way Dan Hedaya says the name Loretta in a museum for people to study forever because it's perfect.
That should have been the first NFT.
Yeah.
I would bid on that today.
I've never met a Loretta that I haven't immediately in my head and had to physically stop from coming to my mouth, utter the word Loretta.
Nice. All right. I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on the late, great Sam Simon here for a moment, because his life actually echoes a lot of the things that we kind of referenced in here. So I mentioned Jennifer Tilly as being a candidate for the new Dick Clark position. They were married, Sam Simon and Jennifer Tilly, got divorced and remained incredibly close friends. She actually cared for him after his cancer diagnosis, and her new boyfriend stayed with him and spent all this time taking care of him and were like the most important people in his life. So I feel like Sam Simon might have written this because he probably would have gone to Jennifer Tilly's wedding and vice versa.
Fair
so
enough.
A really fascinating dude, helped co-create The Simpsons. Really funny, really interesting guy. He got so much money that he used to funnel all of it into these philanthropic causes. Like he started a boat for Greenpeace that would go around. I think it was named the Sam Simon, that was like part of protesting, drilling and all of these things. And he actually started a food pantry that was vegetarian because he was a committed vegan, and said, all right, so here, and this is just free food. And someone said, hey, why are you forcing your choices onto other people? What if they don't want to eat vegetables? He's like, they don't have to. If they want to eat my free food, this is what I'm providing. And he's just a really, really interesting guy who lived an interesting life. Sam Simon, cool dude, and wrote some great, great stuff. He was a very funny man. And I think when his name pops up on an episode, I tend to like it quite a bit.
I think I think Sam Simon is pretty well plugged into, or was pretty well plugged into, the better angels of humankind in some ways. I think he's good at infusing television characters with humanity. I think that's one of his successes on The Simpsons. Was like keeping that show from going completely into sort of monstrousness and kind of like fanning the flames of an essential humanity of that family. And I think that's reflected in Cheers. I think Cheers falters, which we're finding out, Cheers falters when it tries to be edgy. It probably succeeded at the time, but it falls flat now. And what works about Cheers now is when it's warm and when it's affectionate and when it's humanistic. So I think that's probably has to have something to do with Sam Simon.
Well put. Sam Simon, interesting dude. Really good guy from all I've heard. So hopefully I don't hear anything awful about him. But at this point, people he's dead. Can we there's probably some bad stuff. Just let him be dead and peaceful, okay? He was best friends with his ex-wife. He couldn't have been awful, right?
We've canceled people for less. I don't know.
That we have. All right. Have we talked since the Celtics exploded?
I believe our last Our last show was during during Game 5. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then everything changed. We were talking about changes. I didn't think these changes were coming, and quite so massively. So I know that everyone comes here for their up-to-date, hard-hitting sports information. Danny Ainge retires. Brad Stevens, shockingly. So I felt like there was a decent chance Danny Ainge was not going to stay in this job. He just didn't kind of need it. He'd won a ring. He was very successful. He could have any job that he wanted. And I feel like he was thinking, and I thought there was a fair argument that he didn't quite get enough credit for, the premium talents that he drafted that other people were not going to draft. I mean, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are as good a 1-2 as they were found. And both of those guys, when he got drafted them, had a lot of questions from other people saying, really, you're taking those guys? And they're awesome. So I think Danny was feeling a little underappreciated. He had health issues. Him retiring did not shock me. Brad Stevens becoming the new president of the
basketball
Celtics.
Operations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
It was it was up or out. It's up or out with the coaching job. And you either move up or move to a new team or coach the Celtics long enough to watch yourself become Jim O'Brien. And for Brad Stevens, up or out.
I was really kind of taken aback. I mean, on some practical level, I knew he had been here a while. 8 years sort of shocked me. He was here longer than Doc, longer than O'Brien, longer than Patino, whatever, but longer than Casey Jones, longer than Bill Fitch. I just hadn't realized how long he had been head coach of this team.
Oh, yeah.
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 A complicated legacy in that, he left with the reputation of having a couple of teams that underachieved. But at the same time, and it's funny because his first 5 years, his teams were usually recognized as being big overachievers. Teams that got to the Eastern Conference Finals when they were expected to get to maybe the first round of the playoffs. So he started strong, and then these last few years, his teams had the reputation of underachieving.
I wouldn't say they had. I mean, he had one. They had one kind of stinky series against Miami in the ECF.
Yeah,
that in retrospect, they probably should have won.
The Milwaukee ECF is, I think, the one that stands out. However much blame you want to ascribe to Brad Stevens for that, I mean, that was the year that people thought they were going to be pretty amazing and really shit the bed in the Eastern Conference Finals.
That was the semis, yeah. They against.
Was that the semis? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That was the semis. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I watched that series. I'm loath to put the full blame on Brad Stevens. I was watching Kyrie Irving demand to guard Giannis on the
Giannis, yeah.
That
was rough.
I don't think it's how Brad drew that up.
Those were some rough clips. Yeah, he's just waving off help and going, "No, I got Giannis."
Kyrie makes a lot of choices, and we're we're definitely learning so much about Kyrie that he should have just kept to himself.
Yep. So Brad Stevens is now the president of basketball operations. He knows the team well, supposedly had a lot of insight in team building. He was a college coach who went out and scouted talent, found overachieving talent at Butler. If we want to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, all right, maybe he's going to do a good job as president of basketball operations, most important job he has right now is getting a head coach that is going to maximize the next few years of Jaylen and Jason. Who is that coach? Who's your number one draft pick to be the new coach of the Boston Celtics?
Not Sam Cassell.
Oh, I was kind of liking Sam. Why not Sam Cassell?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
Just not respect, no disrespect to Sam Cassell. Not now.
Okay. All right. So who would your top choice be? If you just say, I can go out there, I can get anybody, money's no object, and someone who is not realistically married to the team that they're at. And I don't know that there are even that many guys that fall into that category. Who would be your person?
I can answer this very succinctly for me.
Hit me.
It's Kara Lawson.
Kara Lawson, yeah.
The women's coach at Duke, former Celtics assistant coach. Because
Mhm.
anything, Mike Krzyzewski's retiring. If we can fuck Duke basketball twice
Yes.
in the course of like a month, I feel like that rights the karma imbalance on the Celtics.
Yeah. That was the first name I typed to you even before they started talking about it on NBC Sports. I feel like this makes so much sense. Like she's a coach that the players just seem to really love. Like when she left for Duke and they're taking the pictures of Duke basketball, and like she connected with them in a really seemingly significant way. And isn't that kind of what we need right now? Someone who's just really going to have a connection with all these players.
Also, and I don't think we can overlook this or overstate this enough. Fuck Duke.
It's a great point. I mean, you're really nailing it right there.
I think someone brought up Mike D'Antoni in a group chat.
No.
I love me some Mike D'Antoni.
Look, Mike D'Antoni, great assistant coach. If Kara wants to hire him, I'm not opposed.
Right.
But Mike D'Antoni, a very fun coach. He's never won anything. He's, I think, 106.
Yeah.
He's got a bad hip. Why are we bringing in Mike D'Antoni? Why is that happening? And he just got fired and couldn't get another job. He couldn't get another job.
There's no way he's got the easiest gig right now. He's hanging out with Steve Nash on a team that's going to win the title.
Yeah.
He's coaching offense. He doesn't have to talk defense.
No.
Like
Which
he
he
can
never
have
did anyway.
No. He's adjacent to some of the best Italian food in the country, which is important to him. Like, there's no way Mike D'Antoni. Why would he want to hear from Sully in Southie when he can chill on the bench?
Yeah. Now, Tookie, you didn't want Mike D'Antoni, did you?
Hell no.
No.
No, I respect myself.
Yeah.
What?
So that's what I thought. But so who is it that you want? I know there's whispers out there.
If only there were a way to just, we have the technology to build a time machine. If I could get Bill Russell from 30 years ago.
Oh, that's the dream. Yeah. I mean, if there was a time machine, that would be pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That would be pretty amazing. Yeah. Does not get enough credit for what he did as a coach.
Absolutely no.
And because they act like, yeah, well, he struggled when he wasn't coaching Bill Russell. It's like he wasn't coaching prime Bill Russell when he was head coaching.
Yeah.
I mean, that was Bill Russell the last couple of years of his career, and also coaching a bunch of guys who are towards the end there. And he maximized what that team did and really led them to 2 titles that just talent for talent, they probably didn't have any business winning. I mean, that last Lakers team that they beat, no one thought the Celtics were going to win that. How does he not get credit for coaching one of the bigger upsets? I feel like it's at least partially because, it was their 11th title, and so people were just so used to seeing the Celtics win. But you got to give the man some credit, don't you think? When you coach a team that upsets a team that dramatically?
He deserves his flowers.
He does. He does.
And he's vaccinated now. Protect that man at all costs.
Protect Bill Russell at all costs. I want him racing his Lamborghini across the country.
Yeah.
Safely and healthy.
That's the only good use for a time machine, is to keep making Bill Russell younger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Benjamin Button him tonight.
All right. So we've got Sam Cassell, who is a possibility. We've got Chauncey Billups, who's been mentioned. I'm just saying, these are the names that are out there.
Yeah.
Evan Turner has said he's not taking the job. I don't know that anyone genuinely thought he was, although Tatum then tweeted out that he hoped Evan Turner was going to get the job, which was very interesting. Kevin Garnett made a point of saying on his Instagram stories that he could not take the job because he would swear too much and would immediately get in trouble and get fired, which fair. I know I mentioned him potentially being a coach, but when you have a coach say that, probably not the man for the job.
He knows himself.
Yeah, it's important to listen to KG when he's speaking.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish Doc had taken that year off and not immediately taken the Sixers job, because Doc would be a pretty great candidate right now. That would be pretty strong. Do you think, as he's watching Joel Embiid limp along and Ben Simmons still being afraid to shoot, do you think there's any part of Doc Rivers saying, if I had waited 1 year, I would get to coach Tatum and Jaylen Brown and build around those two guys and watch them ascend into their prime, healthy? If you hooked him up to a lie detector.
I just don't know if Doc has that kind of foresight.
Well, I mean, I don't know that anybody did coming into this season. Not that many people thought this was a job that was going to be open.
Yeah.
Philly is up by 13. So
was Embiid playing?
Yeah.
How's he doing?
33-11.
God damn it. We do this stupid fantasy draft every night. We draft 5 guys for 5 categories. And I passed over Joel Embiid in the second pick. Someone took Kawhi. I was really hoping Jeff would take Embiid first and I could take Kawhi. But I hate having to count on the health of Joel Embiid. It's just not a place I ever like living in.
Is that you, Philadelphia? Philadelphia, is that you coming in on the airwaves?
So I passed him up. I took Rudy Gobert.
Oh.
Yeah, because he wins me blocks. Anytime you get Rudy Gobert, we only take 5 categories. It's points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks.
Karma's a category, Mike.
You get Gobert, and you immediately take the lead in rebounds and blocks.
It hurts for me to hear you say this.
It hurts me to do it. It doesn't feel good. I do what I have to do, not what I want to do. I would have much rather taken Donovan Mitchell. I love Donovan Mitchell. He only gets you points and a few assists. I can't. Points are the easiest thing to get later on. I got to get my boards and blocks. There's only a couple of guys who get you those things. And I knew Capella would be gone by the time everything came back around. So it was get Gobert there, or basically surrender 2 categories, or gamble on Joel Embiid.
Killing me.
I'm killing myself. I'm looking for Dave's basement and just saying, Dave, what are you doing tonight?
Here, sit in this vat, will you?
All right. That's our Celtics talk. That's our Cheers talk for the week. Hey, we're going to be back next week solving all of our local teams' problems and talking about the next episode before one of my favorite episodes. I need to stop building that episode up because I have not watched it in years. And at least a couple of times I've thought an episode was better than it turned out to be. So I need to stop looking forward to that too much. I'm making a Christmas morning a bit too much. So we'll see what that ends up being. But we'll be back next week with episode 14 of season 2. Stay healthy, stay safe. I'm Mike. That's Tookie. That's Dave. And we're all going to try to stay cool. Stay safe. Bye, everybody.